Hey guys, Nikki with Resin Melody here today. I need to restring my Resinsoul Mei, so I thought I would bring you guys along for the ride. I ended up getting a Seed Arts wool head, and I took my Resinsoul Mei's head off to see how the fit was. And when I put her head back on, one of the knots came loose, and she's now just a little bit floppy. So yeah, let's restring her, and I figured I'd walk you through my process. So let's get started. All right, so obviously the first thing we do is we've got to undress her. And I'm going to start the whole process and just immediately take her head off. And once we get the clothing off, we can fully see what the damage is. So what happens with Resinsoul is they actually just tie their knots. I mean, you can see they're not very good, and I'm really sorry. I don't actually know the official name of knots. At one time I used to, but not anymore. I have not used them in a long time. But there is one knot that I think came loose. And yep, you can see I have the end of the elastic here. So it is slowly coming out this leg. So I'm going to go ahead and completely unstring her. The elastic may or may not be still good. I'll see that if that's the case, and if I need to change it, I do have a couple different sizes here with me as well. So looks like I can actually just unknot this. So that knot that was in her neck was actually the knot for her arms. That's interesting. Okay. Oh, Resinsoul. Okay. So as is usual, when I unstring dolls, I lay out the pieces in the order that I take them off for each side so that I don't inadvertently get the shins mixed up. And I keep the S-hooks with the different body parts. Got some. All right. The elastic actually seems to be really nice. So I may hang on to that and actually just reuse it because I think it was pretty well measured to begin with. I was very pleasantly surprised. If you saw my box opening video, you will have seen how surprised I was that her elastic was actually quite nice, and I didn't have to immediately restring her, and she came with S-hooks, and I didn't have to do that. And so what this looks like to me, I'm just comparing the elastic that I have out here. So normally when I restring dolls, MSD size, I do either a 3mm or a 3.5mm elastic for their neck to ankle, so through their body, and then either a 3mm or 2.5mm, sometimes a 3.5mm. It all depends on the stringing channels for the arms to go from wrist to wrist through the chest. So in this case, I'm looking at the size of this elastic here. And this elastic actually appears to almost be 2.5. I'm willing to be wrong. And I am wrong. This elastic is a 3mm elastic that they used in her arms. And that means the slightly bigger elastic is a 3.5mm that they used from the neck to ankle. So I'm going to scrunch these together a little bit. I'm kind of going to put the shoulders in, and what I personally like to see is the elastic go from elbow to elbow, and it looks like this is a little bit longer than that. That seemed to actually still be okay. But the reason why that was okay is because Resinsoul strings their dolls so that it goes wrist to wrist, and then a portion of it actually goes up into the neck. So I am going to shorten this elastic, and I'm going to do just a little bit longer than elbow to elbow. And if I go to stretch it out, let me just put these parts in here. If I go to stretch it out, you can see that it will actually adequately stretch wrist to wrist, and I still have a little bit more stretch than what is than what's necessary to get to the hooks. So that gives me some so-called bounce, I guess. And I just tie it in a knot like this. I find these type of knots to be the most secure so that they don't come loose. So again, I'm just going to double check that measurement. Yep. And I'm going to cut off some of this excess elastic just because I don't like having that much elastic in the body. And I know in my previous restringing video, I admitted that I do have restringing tools, official restringing tools. I do. I have one from Dalmore, I have two from Volks, and I don't use them, quite honestly. My stringing tools of choice are a pipe cleaner that I can just fold in half, and then rat tail. So in this case, I have two different colors, which end up, they're actually two different thicknesses, but that part doesn't matter. But it's basically just kind of like a silk or nylon cord. You can also use ribbon. I do not recommend using yarn. Yarn or thread, it's too rough and too skinny, and you will get either some sort of rug burn, or you'll actually end up slicing your fingers. So I don't advise that. I mean, if that's something that you choose to do, who am I to argue? It's just not something I advise. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and so what I do is I fold the pipe cleaner in half, I stick it in the elastic, I make sure that the knot is pretty well centered. I do a quick couple twists on the pipe cleaner, and then I bend it a little bit so that when I go up into the body cavity, it'll easily come up the shoulder. And I do each side a little bit at a time, so I don't fully string one side and then the other. Usually I do it, you know, shoulder joint and then shoulder joint, elbow joint, elbow joint. And that's to help maintain tension. You'll see I just had a little bit of trouble getting this in here. It looks like it's getting caught on the elastic. It's already in there. And there we go. Okay, and you can see inside, you just kind of want to make sure that the elastic is straightened out a little bit. And I pull the extra bits from the knot so that they're pointing down, and that helps eliminate them from popping through the shoulders when we're restringing. So in this case, actually I'm gonna do it on this side. I kind of loop the elastic that I'm not currently using over the head, and that's just to kind of help make sure I don't lose it. And I'm just gonna straighten this out a little bit and bring this in. This particular pipe cleaner is quite fluffy. When you are restringing very small dolls, you may find that a pipe cleaner is hard to use just because of the extra fluff in it. And if that's the case, you could loosen it up a bit, take some fluff out. You could get some jewelry wire. Just make sure you're careful with your fingers. You know, nobody wants injured fingers. So what I'm doing here is I took the pipe cleaner out. I'm just sticking a piece of rat tail in so that in case the elastic goes up into the torso, it's easy for me to retrieve it. And I'm just doing the same thing on the other side. And pull it through. And you see how this started twisting here? I honestly just kind of try to keep making things as straight as possible as I'm stringing. So now I'm doing this body or this part with the elbow, strung that through. And then I just grip this with my fingers. If you don't have the strength to grip it with your fingers, that is okay. You could get hemostats, I think, or forceps. I'm not sure what they're called, but I will link to them in the description down below. But once I do that, I go ahead and just pop the hand on. And you can see this particular one, it did kind of go back into the body. So if I grab it here, you can see inside, as I pull it, it pulls the knot to the side. So I just try to make sure that if I hold the knot on the side that's already done and pull, it'll kind of help start pulling some of the elastic from the side that's already done, and it'll help even it out. So now I'm actually going to see if I can get this rat tail through. I don't even need the pipe cleaner this time, which is great. And again, I just grip it with my fingers, put the S hook on. In this case, the small side goes on the elastic and the larger side goes on the hand. The larger side goes on the hand. There we go. All right. And we have some strung arms. So I just kind of pull a little bit, make sure that it's a little bit more even. All right. So her arms are strung, and I'm gonna do the same thing here. So what I do is I actually lay out the pieces. So in this case, she has her upper torso, her bottom torso, like, and then her thigh pieces and her shins. And before I tie this in a knot, I'm gonna take it in my hands. I've got both ends here, and I have the loop here in my right hand. And I'm gonna grab both of these so that it makes two loops, one for each leg. And I'm gonna measure it from the neck, so just above the neck, down the body, and it does look like it is actually the measurement style that I like, where each loop goes from neck to knee. And how that works is, now if I grasp this really tight on both ends and the loop on the top, so I've got both loose ends and a loop, go from neck to knee. If I pull, it'll go from neck to ankle, and it actually has a really nice strong tension on it. So that's how I like my dolls strung. So I'm just gonna go ahead and tie this in a knot. And I can honestly say I'm so thoroughly impressed that Resinsoul has switched up their elastic. They've started adding S hooks. It all makes massive amounts of difference. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this, and I'm actually gonna string her so that the knot is in her chest. We can see here, she actually has like a round hole that the knot would fit into. So that means I don't have to do the knot in the torso. It just makes it a little bit easier to take her head on and off. So that is honestly personal preference. You'll see some dolls don't actually have that bigger circle opening, and all they have is the one little slit. Those are the dolls that you almost have to put the knot in the torso. So just something to keep in mind. But with Mei here, we don't need to do that. But again, personal preference, my personal preference is to put the knot in the torso. So what I do in that case is I kind of measure from the neck down into the chest cavity, and I will keep this as the spot that goes into the neck. Pull the elastic so I can get the bottom of it. And now I have 2 loops that go up into the neck. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take both of these loops and I'm going to pull them up through the neck. So in this case, you can see in here, the elastic sits more against the back. In different dolls, the elastic is going to sit in different places. So sometimes you will put the body elastic in front of the arm elastic. Sometimes you'll put it behind. So in this case, I'm going to put it in front of it. I'm just going to run this up through her neck. And I have these 2 loops here. The knot is in the chest, which is exactly what I want. I'm going to take the pipe cleaners out. And I'm just going to stick the big S hook in here. So that way it doesn't, I don't lose it. So I don't lose the elastic coming down through. And let's see. And then here, I've got the 2 different loops. And what I will do is kind of take each one individually through each part. So in this case, I think I can actually just use rat tail for all of it. I'll give it a shot and see. I may have to go back to using the pipe cleaner, and that is okay if that's the case. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just feeding this loop on her left side. I'm feeding down into the left side of the hip. Since that seems to be where that loop wants to be, which is great. And I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to loop it down and thread these in here. And then I'm just going to pull the loops through. Get her hands out of the way a little bit. And I'm just going to alternate here. I'm going to go the left thigh, I guess it's her left thigh. Put that on, pull it through. And do her right thigh. Pull it through. That looks like it kind of, okay. I'm gonna do the same thing with her calf. And what I'm actually doing here, because I heard the elastic kind of shift a little bit when I pulled it each separate side through the thigh. So I'm going to string both on. I'm just kind of getting them aligned, getting the elastic through the top of the piece. And I'm actually going to pull them both at the same time. And they feel about even, so that's good. And so let's see. May as well pull them both up at once, right? I lied. I'm gonna do one at a time. Okay, so I've got the hook here. Okay. So these hooks are a little bit harder to get on because the elastic is a little bit thicker than what it was in the hands. Sometimes it takes a little finagling. So I finally got it. And I'm gonna hook her foot. And then we'll do the other side. And one of the things that I did previous on the other foot is I pulled the rat tail out first. If you are new to stringing, I would not do that in case everything snaps back into the leg. So if you accidentally lose your grip, you want to make sure that you have a way to pull that out very easily. So in this case, I left it on, I hooked the foot, and now I'm just going to pull the rat tail out. And here we go. And her body is no longer floppy AF. Yay! So as you can see, she is able to stand. I'm just going to go ahead and pop her head on. And for that, I will use the rat tail as well. You can do it a couple different ways. One is to hook it into the elastic and then thread the head. The other is to just take a loop down through the neck, hook it into the hook, slide the head on, pull up and turn, the head cap on, and there we go. Now the elastic is a little bit tight, which again, that's my personal preference. So as you saw when I was laying her down, she did start kind of kicking her knees, but at the same time, I do have the ability to fully straighten them. And like I said, that is my personal preference. So, but that is kind of a nice tension. I still have the ability to pull the legs out. And with every doll, it's a matter of finding their center of gravity, making sure their feet are flat. And there we go. So thank you so much for coming along with me on my restringing journey with Resinsoul Mei. I hope that it helped you a bit, and don't be afraid to restring your dolls. It can be terrifying the first time. My first doll, I about cried them apart, and I now absolutely love restringing dolls. So each time you do it, it gets easier. You start to know the ins and outs of the different sculpts, the different molds, the different companies, and how they handle the different weights of the resin. So don't be afraid to give it a shot. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comment section down below. DM me on Instagram, find me on Facebook, DM me on Twitter. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have or give recommendations on where to find elastic. So I'm going to go ahead and link all of my tools in the description down below. If you'd like to see more of these kind of videos, let me know, subscribe, and I will catch you in the next video. Have a good one, guys. Bye.